En-Shittification. Why Everything Suddenly Got Worse and What to Do About It by Corey Doctorow. Introduction. Welcome to the En-Shittification. If you've noticed that the internet seems worse than it used to be, you're not imagining things. We're living through what author Corey Doctorow calls the En-Shittification, the Great En-Shittening, a period where the digital services we depend on are systematically degrading. This isn't bad luck or inevitable technological progress. It's the result of specific policy choices made by powerful people who ignored warnings about the consequences. When Doctorow coined the term En-Shittification in November 2022, he wasn't just creating a colourful way to say, things are getting worse. He was diagnosing a precise disease afflicting our digital ecosystem. The term resonated so powerfully that the American Dialect Society named it their 2023 Word of the Year, and Australia's Macquarie Dictionary followed suit in 2024. This book is both a diagnosis and a cure. It explains how we got here, who's responsible, and most importantly, how we can fix it. Because unlike the forces of history or economics, the choices that created En-Shittification can be undone. Part 1. Understanding En-Shittification. What is En-Shittification? En-Shittification describes a specific process by which online platforms systematically degrade their services. It's not just things getting worse randomly, it's a deliberate, predictable pattern that unfolds in 4 distinct stages. Stage 1. Be good to users. Platforms start by offering genuinely valuable services. They burn through investor money to make their offerings irresistible. Think of early Facebook connecting you with old friends, or Amazon offering vast selection and low prices with reliable delivery. The platform creates something people genuinely want and need. Stage 2. Abuse users to attract business customers. Once users are locked in, once your friends are, all on the platform, once you've bought into the ecosystem, the platform shifts focus. Now, it degrades your experience to make things better for business customers. Facebook fills your feed with sponsored content. Amazon's search results prioritize products that generate higher commissions. You're no longer the customer. You're the product being sold to advertisers and sellers. Stage 3. Abuse business customers to extract maximum value. When business customers are dependent on access to the captive user base, the platform turns on them too. Facebook jacks up advertising prices and reduces anti-fraud measures. Amazon raises fees on sellers and pushes its own competing products. The platform claws back all the value for shareholders. Stage 4. The death spiral. The platform becomes a rotting carcass with everyone trapped inside. Quality plummets, but switching costs are so high that users and businesses can't easily leave. The platform extracts maximum short-term profit, while long-term viability crumbles. The 3-stage cycle, Simplified. Doctorow distills this to its essence. First, platforms are good to their users. Then they abuse their users to make things better for their business customers. Finally, they abuse those business customers to claw back all the value for themselves. Then they die. Why this matters? These platforms aren't optional luxuries anymore. They're infrastructure. You work through them, organize through them, stay informed through them. Your communities live inside them. When they rot your ability to coordinate with other human beings. The deterioration of these platforms represents a deterioration in the fabric of modern life. Part 2. Case Studies in En-Shittification. Facebook, the textbook example. Facebook's journey perfectly illustrates the En-Shittification lifecycle. The company was founded to rate the attractiveness of Harvard students without their consent, and as Doctorow notes, it only got worse from there. In stage 1, Facebook was genuinely useful. It helped you reconnect with old friends, share photos, organize events. The service worked because it showed you content from people and pages you actually chose to follow. Stage 2 began when Facebook achieved critical mass. It became difficult for people to leave because doing so meant abandoning their social network. At this point, Facebook started filling feeds with content from media companies and brands, creating a new customer base of publishers and advertisers desperate for access to users. Publishers flocked to Facebook, becoming dependent on it for traffic. The platform required them to post longer and longer excerpts to their articles directly on Facebook. Eventually, publishers were corralled into posting complete articles on the platform. Then Facebook started suppressing posts with external links as potentially malicious, and even full articles without links were suppressed, unless publishers paid to boost them to reach the very audiences who had explicitly asked to see their content. Stage 3 saw Facebook turn on everyone. For users, the feed became a homeopathic dose of content from people you follow, filled instead with ads and pay-to-boost content. For advertisers, prices skyrocketed while anti-fraud enforcement dropped, meaning they paid more for ads less likely to be seen by real people. Publishers found their organic reach destroyed unless they paid up. The result? Facebook users became hostages to each other, unable to leave because their communities were trapped there. This is the essence of En-Shittification, using lock-in to enable exploitation. Amazon. From customer obsession to rent extraction. Amazon's transformation illustrates how En-Shittification affects e-commerce. Initially, Amazon offered a revolutionary service: vast selection, low prices, reliable delivery, and genuine customer service. They operated at a loss to build market share and customer loyalty. As brick-and-mortar retailers withered, Amazon locked customers in through mechanisms like Prime memberships, DRM-locked ebooks and audiobooks, and the sheer convenience of having everything in one place. When you've prepaid for a year of shipping and your entire digital library is locked to the platform, switching becomes extremely costly. Once customers and sellers were dependent, Amazon began the extraction. Search results now prioritize products that generate higher commissions rather than best matches. The platform pushes its own competing products against sellers who built their businesses there. Fees have risen dramatically. The Everything Store became a marketplace where Amazon rent seeks from both buyers and sellers, while degrading the experience for both. Apple. The walled garden becomes a prison. Apple's ecosystem demonstrates En-Shittification through control rather than just algorithmic manipulation. The iPhone started as a revolutionary device that genuinely improved users' lives, but Apple built high walls around its garden. Through the App Store monopoly and restrictions on adversarial interoperability, your ability to modify devices you own, Apple locked users in. Want to use your iPhone with non-Apple services? Good luck. Try to repair it yourself or at a third-party shop. Apple fights you every step of the way. The 30% App Store tax extracts enormous value from developers who have no choice but to participate if they want to reach iPhone users. Apple blocks alternative app stores and payment systems, even in jurisdictions that legally require them. The platform uses its control to preference its own services while handicapping competitors. Twitter X. Rapid onset En-Shittification. Under Elon Musk's ownership, Twitter demonstrated that En-Shittification can happen quickly when constraints are removed. The platform gutted content moderation, filled feeds with paid verification spam, throttled external links, and broke basic functionality, all while charging more for API access that used to be free. This rapid deterioration shows what happens when the forces that previously restrained En-Shittification, worker pushback, reputation concerns, and basic competence, are eliminated. Part 3. The forces that enabled En-Shittification. What changed? For decades, companies were always tempted to degrade their products to increase short-term profits, but they were held in check by 4 key forces. Understanding what happened to these restraints explains why everything is En-Shittifying simultaneously. Force 1. Competition, destroyed by monopolization. Historically, if a company made its product worse, customers would switch to competitors. But decades of permissive merger policy allowed tech giants to buy or crush potential rivals. Facebook acquired Instagram when users started fleeing there. Google bought YouTube, DoubleClick, and dozens of other potential competitors. When you operate in a market of 5 giant websites, each filled with screenshots of the other 4, competition ceases to constrain bad behavior. As Mark Zuckerberg said, "It is better to buy than to compete." The erosion of antitrust enforcement didn't happen by accident. Starting in the 1970s, a doctrine called consumer welfare redefined antitrust law to focus narrowly on prices rather than market structure. Under this framework, monopolies are fine as long as prices stay low initially, even though the whole point of building a monopoly is to raise prices later. Force 2. Regulation, captured and defanged. Regulatory agencies that should have prevented monopolization were systematically weakened through 4 decades of regulatory capture. Tech companies spent billions on lobbying, hired former regulators, and funded favorable academic research. They convinced policymakers that the tech sector was special and needed light-touch regulation. The result was a permissive environment where mergers sailed through unchallenged, anti-competitive practices went unpunished, and companies grew too big to fail, too big to jail, and finally, too big to care. Force 3. Self-help made illegal. Users once had powerful tools to protect themselves from corporate exploitation through adversarial interoperability, the right to modify products and services to work better for them. You could build ad blockers, create alternative clients for social networks, or modify your devices. Tech companies used intellectual property law to eliminate these options. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act made it illegal to bypass DRM, even on products you own. Terms of service became legal weapons to prevent modification. Patent and trademark law were weaponized against innovation. Apple's restrictions exemplify this. You can't install apps except through their App Store. Can't use alternative browsers on iOS. Can't easily repair devices you purchased. These aren't technical limitations, but legal and contractual restrictions enforced through the threat of litigation. Force 4. Labor, weakened and intimidated. Tech workers once acted as a check on corporate misconduct. Engineers with scarce skills and strong ethical commitments could refuse to implement features they saw as harmful. The culture of "don't be evil" at Google reflected genuine worker influence. But as tech matured, workers became more expendable. Companies shed the pretense of mission-driven culture. Mass layoffs demonstrated that even skilled workers could be easily replaced. The threat of AI replacement further weakened worker power. Without the ability to push back, employees became implementers of En-Shittification rather than resistors. Part 4. The mechanisms of control. Twiddling, the art of marginal exploitation. Doctorow introduces the concept of twiddling, the continuous adjustment of algorithmic parameters in search. of marginal profit improvements without regard to any other goal. Platforms constantly test how much they can degrade service before triggering user flight. This creates a race to find the equilibrium between how much people value the service and how much they'll tolerate degradation. The result is services that are just barely good enough to prevent total collapse while extracting maximum value. Lock-in. The foundation of exploitation. En-Shittification only works when people can't easily leave. Tech platforms have perfected lock-in through network effects. Your friends are on Facebook, so you can't leave without losing them. As Doctorow notes, Facebook users can't help but take one another hostage. Switching costs. Years of photos, messages, and connections that can't be easily exported. Digital libraries locked with DRM, workflows built around specific tools. Ecosystem lock-in. Once you've bought into Apple's ecosystem with iPhone, iPad, AirPods, and Apple Watch, switching means replacing everything. Data hostage taking. Your information is trapped in formats the platform controls, making migration nearly impossible. The two-sided market trap platforms act as intermediaries in two-sided markets, connecting users and businesses, buyers and sellers. This position allows them to hold each side hostage to the other. Want access to users? Pay up. Want access to sellers? Stay on the platform despite degraded service. This creates both monopoly power over services and monopsony power over customers, even when alternatives technically exist. High switching costs keep everyone trapped. Rent-seeking versus profit. Doctorow makes an important distinction. The money these companies extract isn't really profit, but rent. Profit comes from selling a product or service for more than it costs to create. Rent comes from the mere act of owning something, like an apartment building, or, in this case, a platform that others must use. Tech giants are landlords collecting ever-increasing rent from captive tenants, not innovators creating value through better products. Part 5. Why common solutions don't work. If you're not paying, you're the product. Wrong. This popular saying suggests that ad-supported services necessarily exploit users. But Doctorow points out that paying doesn't solve En-Shittification. Many platforms extract maximum value from both paying and non-paying users. Amazon Prime members get En-Shittified search results. Apple charges premium prices while locking users into its ecosystem. Twitter, Blue subscribers, got an even worse experience. Payment status doesn't determine whether you'll be exploited. Market power does. Vote with your wallet. Insufficient individual consumer action can't fix systemic problems. When switching costs are high, alternatives don't exist, or network effects trap you. Personal choice becomes meaningless. You can't boycott your way out of monopoly. Moreover, the vote with your wallet framing wrongly suggests that market dynamics will naturally correct problems. But when the market itself is broken through monopolization, individual choices can't restore competition. Don't be evil. Unsustainable. Google's famous motto represented a genuine belief that corporate culture could prevent misconduct. But internal culture can't withstand external market pressures. Once competition was eliminated and shareholders demanded maximum returns, the ethical commitments of founders and workers couldn't hold back En-Shittification. The people running these companies aren't necessarily villains. They're following the capitalist imperative to maximize shareholder value. Without external constraints, good intentions fail. Part 6. What to do about it. The core principle: make tech companies weaker, not better. Doctorow's central insight is that we shouldn't try to make tech giants behave better while letting them stay powerful. We need to make them less important, less powerful, less able to capture and exploit users. We can make the platforms less important rather than making them less terrible. This means structural solutions that reduce their power, not behavioral remedies that trust them to self-regulate. Solution 1. Restore competition through antitrust. Breaking up tech monopolies and blocking anti-competitive mergers is essential. The Biden administration made promising starts with more aggressive antitrust enforcement, appointing leaders like Lina Khan at the FTC, who understand that market structure matters, not just prices. This means unwinding previous mergers that never should have been approved, blocking new acquisitions by dominant platforms, preventing self-preferencing and other anti-competitive practices, recognizing that monopoly power itself is harmful, regardless of short-term price effects. Solution 2. Restore self-help through interoperability. Users need the right to modify and customize the products and services they use. This requires mandatory interoperability. Platforms should be required to work with third-party tools and services. You should be able to use an alternative Facebook client or message iPhone users from Android without degradation. Right to repair. You should be able to fix devices you own without manufacturer interference. Adversarial interoperability. Making it legal again to reverse engineer and modify products to make them work better for users. Data portability. Easy export of your data in usable formats so you can switch platforms without losing everything. These rights need legal protection. Companies will fight interoperability because it reduces lock-in and enables competition. Solution 3. Uphold the end-to-end principle. The Internet's original architecture embodied an end-to-end principle. Networks should reliably deliver data from willing senders to willing receivers. Applied to platforms, this means showing users what they asked for, not what the platform prefers to show them. When you follow someone on social media, you should see their posts. When you search for something, you should get the best match, not the most profitable result. Platforms should be neutral conduits, not manipulative middlemen. Solution 4. Empower workers through unionization. Tech workers need collective bargaining power to push back against harmful practices. A reinvigorated labor movement in tech could refuse to implement En-Shittification features, blow the whistle on harmful practices, negotiate for ethical commitments in contracts, slow or stop the worst abuses. Unions matter because individual workers can be fired, but organized workers have real power. The idealistic, mission-driven culture that once constrained bad behavior needs institutional protection through collective organization. Solution 5. Create meaningful privacy rights. Real privacy protection requires more than disclosure and consent. It needs structural barriers. Ban commercial surveillance and data brokerage. Establish data minimization requirements. Create private rights of action so users can sue. Make privacy violations expensive through significant penalties. Privacy isn't about individual control in a vacuum. It's about preventing the information asymmetries that enable manipulation and exploitation. Solution 6. Public alternatives and digital commons. Some services might be better provided as public utilities or commons rather than for-profit platforms. This could mean public social networks run by governments or non-profits, open protocols instead of closed platforms, community-owned and governed services, public digital infrastructure treated like roads or libraries. The goal is creating alternatives where the incentive to en-Shittify doesn't exist, because there's no pressure to maximize shareholder returns. Part 7. Signs of Hope. Regulatory awakening. After decades of permissive oversight, regulators are finally taking action. The Federal Trade Commission under Lina Khan, the Department of Justice's Antitrust Division, and regulators in Europe are bringing cases that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. The EU's Digital Markets Act mandates interoperability for gatekeepers. Court cases are challenging Apple's App Store monopoly, Google's search dominance, and Meta's anti-competitive acquisitions. These represent real attempts to structurally change the market, not just fine companies while leaving their power intact. Growing public awareness. The concept of En-Shittification resonated because it named something everyone was experiencing. This growing awareness creates political will for change. When people understand they're being exploited and that it's not inevitable, they demand action. Worker organizing. Tech workers are beginning to organize. From Google walkouts to unionization efforts at Apple stores to organizing at Amazon warehouses, workers are building collective power. These are early steps, but they represent recognition that individual action isn't enough. Alternative platforms. The Fediverse, federated social networks like Mastodon, demonstrates that alternative models exist. Open protocols allow multiple independent providers to interoperate, preventing lock-in while enabling innovation. Though still small, these alternatives prove different approaches are possible. Conclusion. This doesn't have to be inevitable. The most important message of this book is that En-Shittification isn't the result of iron laws of economics or inevitable technological progress. It's the result of specific policy choices that can be reversed. We chose to stop enforcing antitrust law. We can choose to enforce it again. We chose to make adversarial interoperability illegal. We can make it legal again. We chose to weaken worker power. We can strengthen it. We chose to let platforms become private regulators of speech, commerce, and social connection. We can choose to restructure these markets to restore competition and user power. The internet we have isn't the internet we have to have. We built this infrastructure once with different values and different rules. We can build it again, better. The stakes. What's at stake isn't just whether your Facebook feed is annoying or whether Amazon search works well. It's whether the digital infrastructure of modern life serves human flourishing or shareholder returns. It's whether we control the tools we use or they control us. The platforms have become the intermediaries for work, commerce, communication, and community. When those intermediaries are optimized for extraction rather than service, it undermines democracy, economic opportunity, and human connection. The path forward change requires action at multiple levels. Individual. Support. Alternatives when possible. Advocate for change. Understand the systems exploiting you. Collective. Join unions, organize users, build power through coordination. Regulatory. Demand that government enforce existing laws and pass new ones to address platform power. Structural. Support fundamental changes to market structure, not just behavioral tweaks. The goal isn't to make platforms slightly less terrible while leaving their power intact. It's to build a digital ecosystem where the incentives align with user welfare, where competition prevents exploitation, where workers have power to resist harmful practices, and where users can leave if they're unhappy. Final thoughts. En-Shittification isn't happening because tech executives are uniquely evil. It's happening because we created a system where monopolization pays, where exploitation is profitable, where users have no exit and no voice. That system can be changed. The forces that once constrained corporate misconduct, competition, regulation, self-help, and worker power can be restored and strengthened. The question isn't whether it's possible, but whether we have the political will to do it. The internet, you remember, the one that felt full of possibility and connection, wasn't a dream. It was real, and it was destroyed by deliberate choices. We can make different choices. We can disenshittify the internet and build something better in its place. As Doctorow writes, En-Shittification is a big tech disassembly manual, a roadmap for the seizure of the means of computation. It is a diagnosis, and it is a cure. The cure exists. We just need to take it.